Well, welcome back to another episode of WTF Walk the Floors. I'm Stephanie Ledger with First Rate Hospitality. I'm joined with my co-host, Michelle Klein of Klein Hospitality. And Michelle, what are we going to be talking about today?
We're going to talk about all things motherhood, and maybe not all things. I don't want to scare anyone on the other side, but this is a moment where we'll bring some perspective and share some insight and celebrate motherhood because we have Mother's Days coming up. So we're excited. We have two beautiful guests in the house. We have Lauryn Reynolds from Tao Group, major hospitality company. Very excited to have you here, Lauryn, and Melissa Aarskaug with GLI and Bulletproof, a company owned by GLI. Did I say that right? Anyway, beautiful. So thank you, ladies, for being here. We are so excited. We're going to talk about motherhood, and it's a beautiful journey, but it can be messy and it can be complicated. And the demands placed on women by society, by the workplace, and why not our own expectations of family and what that all should look like can be very challenging. So, Stephanie, I'm going to kick it back to you and let's get this party started.
Well, first, let's start off of making sure our listeners and our viewers are watching on YouTube know a little bit more about both of you ladies. So, Lauryn, how about you kick it off, give a little bit of background about yourself, and then also, too, with your children.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me today. This is such a cool opportunity. I feel like we don't really get to talk about moms in the workplace and especially in hospitality. So this is awesome. So my name is Lauryn Reynolds. I've been in Las Vegas for 12 years and I've been in hospitality for that long as well. I have two little ones, a 2-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy. So I am constantly picking up darts and soccer balls while I'm
on Legos.
Yeah, we haven't started the Lego. We'll get to that, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm the assistant director of sales right now for Tao Group, formerly with Hakkasan and Light Group. So been in the business quite a while. But yeah.
Welcome. Well, thank you so much. And Melissa, how about for yourself?
I echo Lauryn. Thank you both for asking us to join the podcast today. My name is Melissa Aarskaug. I work for Gaming Laboratories International, GLI, the technology arm called Bulletproof. I've been in the casino gaming industry for almost 13 years with GLI, and my role is Vice President of Gaming. Prior to GLI, I worked in the engineering field, and I'm excited to talk to you about all things mom. I have 4 kids, a 14-year-old, 2 11-year-old twins, and a son that's 2, so 3 girls and a boy. So toddlers and teenagers, it's great.
And Melissa, remind our viewers and listeners more about you and your family.
In regards to
Michelle. Sorry, that was my fault. I meant for Michelle.
All right. So you all know me already. Just like Lauryn described, my house is never quiet, never clean because I have 3 children and they're all boys. And just like Melissa said, I have 1 teenager, not so teenager anymore. He's considered an adult now very recently. So we're still getting used to that concept. And I have twins that are 9 years old. So yes, never quiet, never clean, a lot going on, many activities, and it can get very messy very easily.
Great. So, all right. So now let's go into what was one thing that you wish you had more access when you were starting off as a mom being in the industry. Lauryn, we'll start off with you.
Honestly, I've thought about this question a couple of times, and I feel like because my children are, a little more new to the world, they're not teenagers. Even 4 years ago, it was a lot different. So we actually had access to a nursing room at Hakkasan Group, which was amazing. But, one of the things that I wish companies were more proactive on is the process of maternity leave. Like, we all know it's going to happen, but it's so individualized to each company. I wish we had a little more, knowledge and prior discussions with HR, and I know that can be also something that we do individually, but just having the conversation is huge. I have a lot of colleagues getting married, and I'm always like, go to HR, figure out what the maternity is, because you have to, figure out the FMLA or the PTO. Like, there's so many resources that I feel like mothers, prior to being mothers, just don't realize. And that's kind of one of those things that I wish I had a little more access to before.
No,
I want to
that's
chime in
great.
there for 1 second. It's crazy to me how many countries in the world are so much more forward thinking when it comes to maternity leave than we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
1000%.
And paternity leave too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you definitely see it for positions that are posted in Europe or in the UK, and they'll put in there of, this is a maternity, filling someone that's on maternity, so that it's a 1-year contract. But I think that how you were talking about that, Michelle, with the forward thinking is, compared to for us in the States, it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And how about for you, Melissa?
Yeah, I think I echo everything Lauren said as well. But I also, as a high performing person, I think for me, it was the transition back that was hard. I breastfed my son, and it was during the pandemic, and I think people were so used to me being this way, performing really quick, snappy, that I think the hardest part for me was that transition back with, as a mother who breastfed during the pandemic, it's really hard to transition, because your brain doesn't work as fast and you're still trying to get everything going again. So that was really hard for me personally. And I think a lot of times I would have appreciated more empathy, or like, why is she asking that question again? Or that's not like something she normally does. So I think more empathy around women don't just go from where they were to right back where they were when they left. So I think we've changed as people. Our bodies have changed. Our mind has changed. Our priorities have changed. And I found for myself, having a 2-year-old as well, going through that during the pandemic made it so much harder, because it's not like I had a community of people around me. I mean, we were all in our homes. And so on top of, working remote and not having a community, I'm back to work. And so I think empathy would have been better, and just realizing that it's going to be, a ramp period before, she's 0 to 160 seconds, right? So I think that's what I would have appreciated more.
Love it. I think also too, it's, it may have been like an email or a new policy that came out maybe like a month prior to you coming back. And that's, a lot of people aren't just going through like day one, oh, let me go through all of my emails of everything that I've missed, especially you're thinking it's, now coming out to everyone, and then they're like, you didn't know that was the new policy, or this is the new feature we have in the hotel, or just, that's why it's also too important to making sure that we're having like a checklist, I feel like, for when moms are coming back from their maternity leave, to then making sure that they don't feel, that they're already going through mom guilt of leaving their kids, but then also too of making sure that they're having that empathy and support as well, to saying, okay, here's all the things, we want to making sure that you're feeling the support too, and up to date with anything that may have changed while you're gone.
Yeah. I want to touch upon something that Melissa said, which is your brain doesn't work at the same speed, right? And it's such a big reality. Even at the early stages of pregnancy, we talk about paternity leave, and I strongly believe in it. The dad needs to have that bonding time with the child as well. And for the mom, maternity leave is not just tied into creating that bond, but also getting yourself back to where you were, right? Where your hormones are all over the place. Your body doesn't heal maybe as fast as it would before. For me, at least, my first pregnancy was great. 2 months into it, I went back to work. I would have liked it a different way, obviously, but the circumstances called for it. But my body was okay. My brain wasn't quite there just yet. But with the twins, it took me forever to heal. I had a horrible C-section, and it takes time for you to get back to it. And the brain is a very powerful thing, and it's very real. The fact that you don't remember things as easy and you don't pick up on things as easy. And I am on the same boat with Melissa, where I'm very fast and I'm like a bullet train, right? You tell me something, I take it to the finish line. But if I was to think about that one thing that I would have liked differently back when I had the kids, I would say it was more going back to my first pregnancy. Not so much after the child was born, but during the pregnancy, like not taking time to explain to people openly and maybe hope for that empathy when it comes to, I got to write this down. You need to give me a second to write this down because I don't want to forget, right? And I will forget, right? We talk about pregnancy brain all the time. And then the other thing was pushing myself so hard that by the end of the day, I was so exhausted from walking the floors, from standing, from being, we had many meetings, especially at the beginning of the day and closing the day, where we're all standing and you have this bunch of directors in the room and everybody's standing. And there was someone else who was pregnant at the same time as me. And we would both end those meetings and come out of the meeting thinking, should we just say that we really need to sit down at some point? Because no one was really picking up on the cues, and we didn't have the courage to tell people, I'm still with you. I just need a minute to sit down.
Yeah, and just one other comment to that. I think taking that up another layer is exactly what you said, but it takes time when you're not sleeping as well. So when you have a newborn child, most people are going back 2 to 3 months. Your child is not sleeping through the night yet. So compound your body hormone shifting and however your pregnancy was, there's a lack of sleep when you don't have sleep as well. And your body's trying to readjust. It puts that much pressure physically, mentally, emotionally on your body. So, to all the moms out there, the one thing that I felt like I did fairly well, I probably could have done better, is tell people, hey, I just got back from maternity leave. I apologize. I didn't catch it. And, I'll never forget, one of my female colleagues said, why are you apologizing? And why are you? And it didn't occur to me that every time I started a sentence, I'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry can you repeat that? So I had to learn to not apologize and just say, could you repeat that? And so I think giving yourself grace and patience, and realize no mom, no matter how young or how old, we all have different ways we get back, whether you've had a difficult pregnancy. I had my son later in life, so my body wasn't in its 20s. And so it needed a little bit more time. And so I think, to what you said, spot on. If there was I think Stephanie mentioned a checklist. If somebody said, hey, Melissa, it's okay to step away for 5 minutes and sit down, I would have sat down, but I wanted to go at the same pace, like that bullet train you mentioned, Michelle, that my body just wasn't keeping pace.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a huge toll on mental health too. And that's one of the biggest things I think we can all agree that, a struggle is that mental health. And those are all the points that, contribute to it.
Absolutely. And so many women go through depression, right? Postpartum depression. And it's so real. And not being able, being able to feel like you can perform at the same level that you're used to it obviously starts with the pressure that you put on yourself. But I also think that the more we talk about it and the more we bring awareness to the topic, then the more we can move that needle and help the ones that are coming after us so that they have a better workplace to go back to.
Yeah. And the other thing I think, as a work go-getter type female, type A go-getter, I was contemplating not taking the full maternity leave, even though the company provided maternity, I had vacation time, and I had more than one fellow female say, hey, give yourself some time with your son to regroup, to reconnect, and to get yourself right before you go back. And I'm glad that they had commented on that, because it's a pull. As an ambitious woman, we have to temper our ambitions with being a mother. And so I don't call it kind of mom guilt. It's tempering different parts of our life, high achieving at work and high achieving as a mother. But sometimes we have to temper that for a moment to focus on our child. But I think it makes me a much better employee having to juggle both.
Agree.
I love that.
100%. Yeah.
So we know on our podcast here with WTF Walk the Floor, so we always like to talk also too about a WTF moment. And I was wondering, Lauryn, do you have a WTF moment that you would like to share?
So when you guys said WTF in your email, I thought it was like a bad experience that I had. So I've been thinking about that all day. And I was like, oh, I'm prepared to say this. And then it was positive, and I was like, oh, perfect. I can pivot.
Either or both.
Yeah, no, it's let's keep it positive. I think just overall, during the pandemic, 2020, I had an 8-month-old. So that lost the job, obviously, and then kind of went into this, hiatus. And this kind of has to do with my job, but I went back to UNLV to finish my bachelor's degree while I had my 2-year-old during the pandemic. And then I had my second son the week of my last semester of finals. And I just, as a mom and as a professional, I remember thinking, okay, this is school, but it also relates to our work, right? I feel like as a mom, you feel like a superhuman. Like all my other colleagues at school were, 22-year-olds, 21-year-olds. They don't have a lot of responsibility. And I'm over here juggling a 2-year-old, 8 months pregnant, have to figure out, the hospital I'm having. It was so much, but it was kind of one of those eye-opening moments where I was like, okay, if I can do this, there's nothing in the professional workplace that I can't do. And I just feel grateful for that experience, because I feel like it kind of propelled me to have the confidence and the, aggressive nature of going after exactly what I want, which, I'm in my dream position right now, and that feels amazing. And that's kind of like my it's what WTF moment.
I love that. You know what? Let's tie that in, Lauryn, with what Melissa said about apologizing so much, and ask people out there, what is your superpower?
Yeah.
Look at this woman, right? Pivoting at the most difficult time in her life while raising a baby, because 8 months old is still a baby, and then having another baby on the way while getting a bachelor's degree while starting a new role. What is your superpower?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
All right, Melissa, and how about for you?
I was trying to pick one WTF moment in my life. And as you were talking, Lauryn, I'm like, oh, what about that one? And what about this one? But I think I'll tell
them all.
I know. I think I'll tell you one that that ties really well into what Lauryn was mentioning. So I usually fly on Mondays, and I always am very organized where I'm going, when I'm landing, where I'm staying, who I'm meeting with. And it's down to the minute, it takes me this long to exit the airport, this long to get to the next place. Well, I found out the night before that my mother and father-in-law couldn't watch my son when I was traveling, and my husband had to be somewhere else. At the time, my son was, under 5 months. And I pivoted. So I had a first flight of the morning out of Austin to land in Vegas by 8. So I decided to call my parents and say, hey, can you fly into Vegas or drive into Vegas? I need to bring my son because my husband, Brian couldn't do it. And my mother and father-in-law couldn't babysit. And this was like late at night. And I had to be speaking at an event in the morning. So I had a 5-month-old baby. Woke him up at 4:00 in the morning to get to it was like a 6-something flight. And get there, I land in the airport. And as you know, as a mom, you have a stroller, a car seat, his bags, your bags, a mountain of things that you got to collect. And I had to be at an appointment at 8:30 and my plane landed at 8. And of course, I didn't wear my work clothes because I was afraid my son was going to throw up on my outfit. So I had mom clothes on. In 30 minutes, I was able to exit the plane, collect my son, change my clothes, drop him in the passenger pickup of McCarran Airport, give him to my mother. By the way, I didn't pack him a bag or anything besides diapers and a backpack, and get to my meeting with a major gaming client by 8:30. And one of my colleagues is like, how in the world did you get off the plane, drop your kid, change your clothes, and get so put together for this 8:30 meeting with a C-suite client on the Strip? And I think the reason I tell that stories is we do it because we're moms, right? I'm committed to my job. I'm committed to my clients. I'm committed to my son. And I think that's the one thing that you have to realize as a mom is you got to be committed to your kid, but you got to be committed to your job and your word. And I would never, let people down, but I had to figure out how to balance it. Right. And so, I'm sitting there on the plane I'm trying to get my son to not cry on the plane. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to get in one of the first seats. So I get off the plane and I'm running like an athlete does. I'm running the story in my head. I'm like, okay, this is what I got to do. This is my ground game. And I'm building a plan. And that's what makes moms so wonderful is we build plans on, like Lauren said, having a baby, going back to school. We can do it and we can do all the things, but we need people around us to help us. Had my mom not driven 5 hours to get to Vegas to grab my kid, had my colleague not covered for me in case my Uber couldn't get me to the meeting in time, make plans, because as many plans as we make, things are going to change and life's going to happen.
Wow.
And that's my story.
My drop.
Great story. Michelle, how about for you?
I'm not going to add to that because I just want everyone to stay with those two stories. That's how we're going to do this. And I know that we are running short on attention span from the people on the other side. So this is what I'm going to say. Clearly, we have some superpowers. So let's stop apologizing. Let's create some boundaries. It's okay to say no. And let's keep doing it because the reality is we can.
Great. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Appreciate it. This is always a fun episode. I can't believe this is our third time celebrating on Mother's Day on the podcast with some amazing moms. Thank you again and see you on the next one.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.